Welcome to the next episode of the Limitless Body and Mind podcast. In this episode, we'll discuss how to stop sugary cravings and all sorts of food cravings that you might be having. Foods, drinks, or even alcohol. We'll identify the three main culprits for your sugary cravings and all the strategies that we can apply to overcome them. They are different and maybe you haven't heard some of them. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to this podcast. It's brand new. My YouTube channel is also new, but I guarantee you I've been in the game for a long enough time to give you very valuable information in every single video. The first season of the podcast will be only about fat loss. So if you're somebody on the journey of weight loss or fat loss, just make sure to subscribe, follow the episodes, and they will tackle every single challenge that you might be having along the way of your journey. So enjoy listening or watching, and thanks for being my guest. It still tastes like chocolate, but it's not going to spike up your dopamine as high. And there will be the equivalent of if you don't eat, you're gonna die. One of the easiest things you can do is just make it very hard to reach. Start replacing things, but still have some alternatives so you don't feel desperate, even if you don't want it. You want to create that a little bit of negative experience and relationship with that thing. Okay, let's dive into it. So first we need to identify what are the main culprits for your cravings. And I've experienced it myself. I have cravings. I had huge binge eating problem. I have clients who have binge eating problems. And you can have bulimia, you can have anorexia, you can have all sorts of eating disorders, and they usually actually stem from these problems that we'll be discussing today. So this is very, very valuable podcast episode for many of you. It could be life-changing because cravings can actually affect the way you feel about yourself, your self-esteem, your self-confidence, and massively affect your whole life. I know that from personal experience, a bad one. So the three main culprits, which you're very lucky to be in this video to identify, because most information out there, it's giving them separately. You can barely see anybody combining these three, but I had to combine them in my practice to help my clients and myself. And here's how it goes. We have first the primal brain. I will explain what the primal brain is, how it works, and how to defeat it. The dopamine addictions. You probably have heard this. It's very popular right now. And then we have the habits. This is probably the most popular. Your habits are also a big part, culprit that is causing your cravings. So let's dive into them one by one. The first one is the primal brain. The primal brain is something very, very interesting, and it's the cause of a lot of your cravings, and especially if you're binge eating. If you're finding yourself sometimes being theoretically full, you just finished your meal, but you still want to continue eating, well, that's the primal brain kicking in. And there is a specific way to handle it, and it's nothing like any other strategy, okay? So I will show you a book first of all. Before I take the credits for myself, I gotta tell you, I took it all from this book. This book changed my life. I used to have a binge eating problem, which I didn't even know I have. It's been going on for a few years, and in about 2018 or 2019 is when I realized somebody told me that this is how it goes and I'm probably having a problem. And I was like, fuck, I have a serious problem here and I have to handle it. And I did all the research online. And yes, it existed. Other people were having this problem, and it was called binge eating disorder. It's a very bad disorder. So to explain how it looked like, practically every night I was going to the shop, starving, craving massively sugary stuff. I was walking into the shop and identifying what are the sweetest and the most brutally sweet and caloric treats that I can have. And I was getting bags of them, like one of this and one of this and one of this, and just a chocolate milk as well, just in case. And it was a total amount of about 20 British pounds back every night when I was going to the shop. It was brutal. On the next day, I felt super guilty because I ate it all. This is not for a few days. I ate it all, like in half an hour or 1 hour, watching movies. Then I started feeling miserable. On next day, starving myself, fasting, aiming to burn all the calories, and then in the night or maybe the next night I do exactly the same. And that, believe me, destroyed me in a very brutal way, because I wanted to be something better. Maybe you are in this situation too, and you definitely recognize what I'm saying. I wanted to be confident in my skin. I wanted to go amongst people where there's a lot of treats and not want to eat everything and just think about that. I was literally thinking about everything that was on the table, but not enjoying the conversation with people. And also when I go to the gym and train, or in the park with the guys for the calisthenics, I go to do pull-ups and my performance was very bad because my eating was like shit. So it was a massive problem. And then one video on YouTube just showed me that book. and the guy there said, that book helped me, saved me, helped me overcome it. It's nothing like what you've seen in other places, so go have a listen or read it. And I did, and it really changed everything for me. This book made me stop binge eating the moment I read it. Like the moment I reached like the pivotal point in the book, which I will highlight now in this podcast episode, my binge eating problems stopped. So the problem usually with binge eating and the traditional conventional methodologies for handling is that it's not very obvious what's causing the issue, and it's really the primal brain. But most traditional methods for treating these binge eating disorders and other like bulimia and anorexia is identifying triggers that are causing that behavior, dealing with every single trigger, and then finding the next one until you eventually run out of triggers. But the problem is that the actual signals for this behavior don't come from the triggers, and they're not habitual. They come from the primal brain, which is not associated with any particular habit. And the method that they use is for handling habits and overcoming some habitual behaviors. But this is not a habitual behavior. This is a brain issue. It's the way your primal brain is wired. So what is the primal brain? The primal brain is the brain that is responsible for fight or flight thoughts and signals. And that primal brain, the good part is, highlight that and remember, it cannot make you take action. A primal brain is in the middle of the brain, and then on top we have the frontal cortex and all other parts of the brain. I'm not a brain expert, but the frontal cortex is what is responsible for our decision making. The primal brain is not responsible for decisions, but just for signals. And they can be very loud and very clear. And the signals will be the sort of related to the topic today, like I have to eat, I want to eat. And they will be the equivalent of if you don't eat, you're gonna die. And they're very, very strong. And they stay there. As long as you recognize them and as long as they exist in your brain, they stay there and they become louder and louder and louder. And it's designed in such a way that it's just so loud that your frontal cortex can't reason with it and eventually gives up. It sounds like a battle which you can never win, and it actually is. This is truly a battle that you can't win in your brain. If you start arguing with your primal brain and saying, no, I just ate and I don't need to eat that, it's gonna keep finding other reasons and you will be stuck in this cycle in your mind. It can go for hours and eventually will make you eat the thing that you know you don't want to eat and you should not be eating. And theoretically, you should have no need to eat, but the bloody thing makes you want to eat all. So, how do we defeat the signals that come from our primal brain responsible for a lot of your cravings, a lot of your binge eating problems, the times when you know that you are fed, you don't need any more food, but you still want to continue eating? It's by ignoring it. The primal brain sends signal to the frontal cortex, which then has to make the decision to open the fridge, to pick up the fork, to put the food in your mouth, to chew it up, and to swallow. The primal brain only tells the frontal cortex what to do. But here is the caveat. If you ignore these signals and if you start observing your cravings, your hunger signals as something that is like out of you, like a third person thing, identifying it as a primal brain signal is going to help you. Imagine it's a third person, it's something outside of you which you can then decide to ignore. And here is what happens. This signal is based on the fact that the primal brain believes you're gonna die if you don't eat. Well, if you don't eat and you don't die, then it's going to start getting convinced that this is not really true. The way this behavior became apparent in the first place is when you were just, without any thought, just feeding yourself and binge eating without really putting much thought into it, and just practicing this for either cultural reason or because your mom told you to do that and you didn't even put any thought into it. Eventually, when you do this consistently, the brain realizes that this is very important for you. So now it's like giving you this signal all the time. So what you can do is just ignore that signal and live through it, observe it as a third person, and you will see that within 15 minutes and 30 minutes, eventually it's going to fade away. but it can't make you pick the fork. The first moment I did that, it was actually funny and I started laughing. I was like, I actually don't really need to pick anything. That signal just stays there. It's like you're bitten from a mosquito and something you feel there, but you don't need to act on it. It's a very similar thing. So that's the strategy that you need to do when you feel you're having these signals. And it's good to remember, because sometimes you can't recognize, is that your primal brain? Is it a habit? Is it just a dopamine craving? Just try not to argue with these signals for the cravings that you're having. It could be sugary cravings or any other food cravings, right? Mostly, keep in mind, mostly the primal brain signals come not just for sugary, but for random, all sorts of caloric food cravings, right? So just ignore them and observe them and don't take action on it. And this can solve a massive problem for you. And again, the book Brain Over Binge by Katrin Hansen, you maybe will be able to find it on Audible, I'm not sure. Have a look or get the paper version. You're not gonna regret it. This book can help you overcome binge eating, bulimia, anorexia, alcoholism, and maybe other sorts of addictions. So it's definitely worth the read. The next culprit that we have is the dopamine addictions. The dopamine addictions are the most common ones that we do to ourselves, especially if we have a sad life or a highly stressful life or a sedentary lifestyle or a boring lifestyle. Because we usually tend to go for things that spike our dopamine because they're easy fix when we don't feel good. Every time you feel a little bit more stressed out, or especially bored, and you're just not in the right mood and you want to feel better, the easiest way to fix this in the short term immediately is get something to spike up your dopamine. But the problem that we're creating for ourselves is that we go for this solution from food. We search for the food. We search for the chocolate bar, for the biscuit, the cookie, the hot chocolate, the thing that is going to spike our dopamine and we don't even know about it. And then there comes the term that people are addicted to sugar. You're not addicted to the sugar, you're addicted to the dopamine spike of the sugar. And the problem with sugary stuff specifically, is chocolate tasting sugary stuff, is that they can spike up your dopamine just as much as sex can do. And sexual pleasure is one of the most pronounced pleasure in our lives. It's very powerful and it spikes our dopamine as high as it can go. And the sugar can do the same. So if you think about it, that's absolutely insane. And here is the problem. After you spike up your dopamine with whatever cravings you choose, then that dopamine crashes down. And it's not taking a long time, usually 5 to 15 minutes. And the dopamine starts crashing down. And when it crashes down, crashes even below base level. The dopamine is the hormone that makes you feel pleasure. When it goes up, you feel great, but when it goes below baseline, you start feeling miserable. So practically what we do, let's say you're sitting on your desk, you're stressed because you have a huge volume of work to do, feeling bored at the same time, can't concentrate, let's have a cookie and start working. And you take that cookie and you start working and you fix the problem just for a few minutes, and then you start losing it. It all crashes, the dopamine crashes, and in short amount of time, you start feeling exactly the same as you were, maybe even worse if you didn't do any work. Usually if you start doing some of the work, then that can help produce some of the other hormones, which will also make you feel pleasurable in another way. So here is the thing. Besides dopamine, we also have other hormones like serotonin, oxytocin, and endorphins. And these hormones can also make us good, but it feels a little bit different. They all act in a different way. Some of them are triggered by receiving love or giving love. Some of them are triggered by just little movement or exercise. Some of them are triggered by completing a task or just showing up outside under the sun. The sunlight can also do that for us. One of the best strategies to overcome your dopamine cravings is learn how to produce the other pleasure hormones instead of the dopamine, which are usually associated with very healthy behaviors. Things which I just mentioned, you can apply to your habitual behavior to every time when you start feeling a little bit down on mood, like when you really need that spike in pleasure. What I usually do is just stand up and have a little walk. You can do a few squats, you can do a few push-ups. Open the windows, let some air come in. Look at the sun or allow the sun to fall on your skin. Play with your pet. Call a friend. Do something that is not going to be related to spiking up dopamine through food. The idea is that we overcome our food addictions. Because when you do that, then you're just getting used to getting your pleasure from somewhere else and eliminating the need for that dopamine. Otherwise, what's happening is you only remember that the only thing that's going to fix your problem is the treats, and you have to snack them, and it becomes like that mandatory and the only option to go to. So progressively we need to train ourselves that there are other options available, right? That's the end goal. And once you start doing that, you realize that you don't need these cravings, these biscuits and cookies throughout the day at all. Once you overcome these problems, I know, telling you from personal experience, and you can ask a lot of my clients who have done this, and they are overcoming all their sugary cravings. And there were some pretty severe cases. People who say, I just have to have that, or I can't survive through the day and I can't do my job. So here is a few other things that you can do that really also help. First of all, start replacing everything that you snack on that is rich on sugar, such as plain chocolate bars, Snickers, Mars, chocolate cookies, with protein-rich bars that also taste like chocolate. This will kind of fake the experience for you. It still tastes like chocolate, but it's not going to spike up your dopamine as high. And that is very, very big thing. And in that way, instead of you hitting your high levels at which you just get accustomed to, you start hitting lower levels of dopamine. And if you start doing that progressively, just lowering the levels, the hits of dopamine that you're getting, you will be progressively coming off the dopamine practically, like a drug. You will be progressively getting used to smaller dosage and smaller dosage. Hope that makes sense, right? So start by just reducing the spikes by just changing the foods, even if you can't, completely cut off the cravings and completely cut off these foods, which will be the ideal scenario. So that's first step. Replace them with protein stuff. It could be also protein shake, by the way. That's a very good one. Then also go for things that are not as tasty. So for example, if you're having oat milk or almond milk and it's always sweetened, go for the unsweetened version. If you're having Coke, fizzy drinks, go for the 0-calorie drinks. That's even better. It's going to not spike your dopamine that much, but it's also not going to add to your calories in a day, and it's not going to cause that problem. So start replacing the foods with low-calorie foods, with high-protein foods, and try to eliminate completely foods that are made with refined sugar in them, or at least have those that have just a small amount of that refined sugar, because that's the biggest sweetener for all these treats. So now we explained all these things, but you need to know now how to apply them to your life, and that's where the trick really is for a lot of you. So don't expect just because you watch the video and you're suddenly gonna overcome your cravings. You're still having that dopamine addiction right now. The way to overcome it is plan for overcoming it, and predict that there will be a journey ahead of you. Depending on how hardcore you're addicted to the dopamine, it might take a week, might take 2 months. And what you want to do is just get some alternatives of snacks ready for your house. Whatever you have right now stored in your cupboard, in your fridge, that you usually go to snack on and you shouldn't be, like it's high sugar, replace it. Get rid of all of it and progressively replace it with other stuff. The things that really work are like Coke Zero. 0-calorie drinks, they really help a lot. Hot chocolate can also help you a lot. Just add less of the chocolate, right? Also replace this milk, the oat milks, which I said. And start replacing things, but still have some alternatives so you don't feel desperate. Because when you are desperate, you end up just going to the shop and buying some more. The key in overcoming your behaviors is planning ahead of time. Don't just wait for the moment to come and then to remember that you have to overcome it somehow. That's not going to help you. You're going to end up making an emotional decision. For you to overcome emotional habits such as the cravings, which are very hardcore, you need to plan for the times when this will become a problem, and have the strategy in place so you don't need to decide on anything when the time comes, but you already have a plan for action that you just follow. Avoid making decisions when you're in this situation. It should be all pre-planned. And finally, for the dopamine, I will give you the 2 things that I do every single day to help me manage my cravings, because I am a human and I do have a sweet tooth, but I don't binge on it and I don't overeat it. And that's because I just have a strategy that I apply every single day. Number one is that I have a protein shake tasting like chocolate every single day. My protein shake is so delicious and it's like a cake that I have for breakfast every single morning. That's my breakfast. And it's fully nutritious, full of calories and the right nutrients that I need. I make my protein shake with milk, about 300 milliliters of milk. I add 2 raw eggs. Some of you might not want that. I totally get it. I have my scoop of protein with 30 grams of protein inside. I have 1 banana, which gives me lots of vitamins and minerals, together with some carbohydrates. I add about 15 grams of walnuts, and I add my creatine inside and some cinnamon for good taste and managing blood sugar levels. That combination, that shake is absolutely massive, and if you are open to it, go for it and I will love it. This will give you that chance to have something sweet, tasting amazing every single day. For anyone with a sweet tooth, that's a massive hack, because the problem that we have is we can't stay long enough without sweets. And if you have that sweet every single morning, even throughout the day when you have like that craving and you think like, I really want something, you will know that you had something in the morning and you also can have something on the next day. It's not that big of a deal. Often we get scared from the distance that we need to go through without having these sweets. But if you know that it's just tomorrow, like it's not that big of a deal, you can handle it. So having this every single day is massive, and it's also going to condition you with that you can have it. Like you don't need to run away from sweets. You can actually have it and you're having it. So mentally it becomes less of a burden. You don't need to carry any burden. You actually are having it. Right? You just replaced the chocolate with something that's much more nutritious and now you're good to go. And the number 2 thing that I do is I do have like frequent walks. I also have my exercise every single day. That exercise helps me elevate my mood and the way I feel for a long time. It makes me feel empowered and energized, easier to focus. And I also have lots of walks, especially in the afternoon. When I have like a bit of a slump and low energy, I always go for a walk, and I also drink lots of water. Here is also my water cup. I always go with it, always have my water, and I always go for walks. I often go out and open the window and just allow the sunlight to go through my eyes. That wakes me up. I do things that naturally makes me feel more energized and feel better. I don't let myself get into that state where I'm super lazy, just sitting on my chair and just like feel like shit and don't want to work out and don't want to work, don't want to do anything, and all I want is just play a movie and have a snack. I don't let myself get to that state. Think of it as a state that you progressively get into. You're not going to just find yourself in there. And if you're used to like getting yourself there, like allowing yourself to get to that state all the time, well, change that. Start moving more. Every 20 minutes, set a timer, go for a walk. That also is going to increase your productivity, which is study proven, and it's something that we can talk about in another episode about peak performance. So do these things, will massively help you manage your cravings. And the final culprit for our cravings is our habits. Number 3. The habits are the one thing that's mostly like covered by a lot of people, and you, I'm sure, know about it. There is also a great book about habits. It's called Atomic Habits. It became very popular the recent few years, and it almost became like the one solution that's going to solve the problem. But without you understand the previous 2 problems, your habits are just not going to cut it. And that's why a lot of people read the book and nothing happens. But it's still a very valid book. It explains how habits work, how micro habits work, how to habit stack, how to prevent some habits from just continuing, and how to replace them with better ones. So in short, I will just give you the tactical tips, things that you can apply right now to your life to start overcoming your habits. These habits can be something like every time you smoke a cigarette and you need to have something sweet to eat. It could be something like every time you finish some certain type of job, you need to go and snack. You have to recognize when you're doing things habitually every single time, and they are snacking as well. It could be any sort of snacking, and if you know that you have to overcome that, it's not with your according to a diet, it's going to just stay on the way of your success, then you want to deal with it and you want to overcome it. One of the easiest things you can do is just make it very hard to reach. The habits are there because they're very easy. they're very attractive and they're very rewarding at the end. And they just become habits very, very easy. They need a trigger, something to tell you that you have to do it. Then you need to be able to access them. Then you are going to execute the habit, and that's your reward, right? So make it hard to reach. If you're usually having certain foods in the house, like peanuts in a jar next to your desk, ready for your rewards to snack on, remove that jar. Maybe get rid of it completely. Don't keep it in the house. The same applies for other foods. Just make them very hard to access. Also, other thing that you can do, which overlaps with the dopamine solution, is just make them not so tasty, right? Next time you go to the shop, just buy something that is low in sugar, that doesn't taste that good, maybe it's a different brand, or start even replacing the sugary foods with some berries, which by the way are very tasty, but probably your taste buds are numbed to that kind of light experience, because it's much lighter experience than just a chocolate, right? The chocolate is very intense. And you can just train yourself to be satisfied by something that is not such an intense experience. And it's going to become like less appealing, and you're going to want them less and less. So put barriers between you and the treats that you want to snack on. That's a massive thing. Just get rid of them or make them hard to access. Whatever you do, it's probably going to help. Also, another thing that you can do is replace them with some sort of activity. Again, overlaps with the previous dopamine solution. Start walking when you feel like you have to reward yourself. Don't do that. Do a few push-ups. And I know that might actually feel very weird, especially for those of you who are not used to training. But take my advice. This is something that you have to apply blindly and then reap the rewards and realize what it is once you have done it. Because it's very hard to identify it as an experience and how it really helps. Because the endorphins that you are going to release through exercise are not very notable. For an inexperienced person, they're not something obvious, and they usually don't satisfy you in the same way that dopamine would. So when you are supposed to reward yourself, just open the window, do a little bit of stretching, do a little bit of movement, a few squats, a few push-ups. That's going to make you feel so good, and it's going to start creating a new habit, which is then very positive and very healthy one. Why is that a new habit, you might ask? Well, it is because it's going to be rewarding. As I said, you're not going to be able to identify the reward right from the first time, but I challenge you, set this to yourself like every day instead of a specific habit for a week, not for a long time, just for a week. Do something else, do some activity. Do open the window and just replace that habit of eating with a habit of doing, and you will see it's going to do miracles for you. At the end of the week, you will be just like, why am I even eating that? And you will have much more desire and willpower to go through the process of getting rid of all these negative habits and get on with the journey of just being in the best shape of your life. And finally, I will give you something that's like a hack that you can do to manage your cravings and become kind of bulletproof to cravings. This is not for beginners, okay? If you're just starting, this is definitely not for you. But if you have already overcome a lot of your cravings and you just want to become that much better because you're still having them, they're still annoying for you, and you sometimes get out of control, this habit is the right thing for you. And that is just store something in the house that you usually crave on and learn to resist it. Again, for a beginner, that would be a terrible idea because you're going to eat it all. That could be like a jar of peanut butter. It could be a jar of Nutella. Once you become good enough and you can manage, start storing a big portion of it and don't touch it. And learn to have a little bit of it. To go through the process, it's good to have a little portion of something that you crave on every single day, but not have the big portion. You can start by just buying the small portion every single day, so you have that barrier of going to the shop all the time to buy it, and just have it every single day, and you get used to the experience, just very much like the shake I shared. Getting used to the experience of having that thing every day, and also recognizing that it's not so special, because to tell you the truth, the secret is these foods are not special. The foods that you crave on, they're nothing special. Get used to having it every single day, but in controlled amount. And when you can control yourself fully, have the bulk, have the whole package, and just keep having it every day, even if you don't want it. That's very important. Even if you don't want it. You want to create that a little bit of negative experience in relationship with that thing. So you recognize it's nothing special, it's just the same as any other food. And I have one more actually. I completely forgot about it, and now as I'm recording, I remember, which is a very powerful hack. And it's a mindful eating. It's mindful eating you're gonna hear a lot, especially when dealing with eating disorders. Mindfulness means being present emotionally and thoughtfully in the moment when you're doing something. And it's very important to be present when you're snacking on things. When you're not mindfully present, what else are you? Like, what do you think about? Where is your mind? Where is your experience? If you logically think about it, when you're not mindfully present, you're thinking about something else. You're consuming that food, but your attention is not in the food, and your attention is there, and you kind of miss the whole experience here. And it becomes something that you do that you don't even know exactly what it is. It makes you feel better. You definitely recognize the dopamine, but you don't recognize the actual food and the texture that well. When you're mindfully present though, it's different. When you're mindfully present, you're gonna realize the texture, the taste of that food. Is it really special? Is it not? And as the secret that I just shared a few minutes ago, it's not that special. Most of the foods are not that special. It's your perception for them that makes them special for you. Being mindfully present is going to help you realize that all foods are foods. They have different tastes, they serve different purpose, and you don't also need to eat them that fast. And you can just go through them without that much excitement. And the excitement about certain foods is really what's causing a lot of these behaviors. So remember, as a last point, be mindfully present when you're snacking and when you're eating your main meals. But it's a rule, just always be mindfully present. If you're watching a TV, just slow down on the TV attention and just focus on your plate. If you're working and snacking, just take a break from work and snack then, and then get back to work. Do as much as possible to be present with your food in the moment. Don't be meditating about something else. Don't be just super focused on something else, being on a call. Respect the food, and you will see that your behavior around food is going to massively change. And that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I tried to break down everything down to the smallest ingredient and give you the most strategic and practical advice as always. If you like this podcast and the YouTube channel, please subscribe. It's new. I need your support. It encourages me to know that you appreciate it and it's valuable for you, so I can continue doing it and share it with other people who might need it. The next few episodes will be talking about training for weight loss, everything that comes with that, the training modalities, what training is important, how to do it, where to do it, when to do it, all of these stuff which are also very important for you. And now in the meantime, you might want to watch one of the previous videos about how to lose fat, which is going to break down the topic down to the smallest ingredient, just as we did with the cravings. So have a look, it's probably going to help you, and see you in the next episode.